Welcome to the One-Year Book of Mormon. A non-Mormon reads through the Book of Mormon. 2 Nephi, chapter 29. This chapter is mostly concerned with the prophecy that most Gentiles will reject the Book of Mormon when it is written because they will cling to the Bible and say that it is enough. This is one prediction Joseph Smith actually got right. Particular verses that I found notable. Verse 3 uses the word Bible, which makes no sense except anachronistically. Looking back, we can see, we've got the Bible, but that would not have been the word that was used in the 500s BC when Nephi was supposedly written. The word Bible comes from the Greek word biblia or biblios, meaning book or books, and so that didn't even exist probably in the 500s BC, and certainly a Jew would not have been speaking Greek or used a Greek word. The word writing or writings, sacred scriptures, sacred writings, something like that would have been used and would have been a more accurate translation to anything Nephi would have said when referring to the scriptures that he had. Also considering the scriptures as a single written work, a Bible rather than the scriptures, plural, or something like that, is similarly anachronistic. It just wouldn't have been something Nephi would have written. So that marks it as a 19th century fraud. Verse 4 has a difference between the 1830 and modern Book of Mormon. The original says travels, while the modern says travails. And the modern probably has it right. It makes more sense to say travails than travels. And it's pretty easy to understand that this would be something that the scribe would misunderstand Joseph Smith to have been saying, and so he just wrote it down wrong, or the printer misunderstood and misread the manuscript. Verse 8 is God asking why the people of the 1800s, at the time the Book of Mormon would come forth, who would reject the Book of Mormon, will complain about more revelation from God, and speaks of the testimony of two nations. In the context, it seems to be saying that the Bible, as in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, has come from one nation, that would be the Jewish nation, with the Book of Mormon coming from the nation of the people of the Americas. However, since the Native Americans who wrote the Book of Mormon, supposedly, were still considered Jewish or Israelite, it doesn't really make sense, since Mormons would then believe that both the Bible and the Book of Mormon would have come from the single nation of the Israelites. But then the Book of Mormon says it's two nations, as if the Book of Mormon people were different from the Jews or separate from the Jews or the Israelites. So it doesn't make sense. On a side note, also, if the first nation there is understood as being only the Jewish nation, this should mean that Luke, the author who wrote the Gospel of Luke and the Book of Acts, must also be a Jew by Mormon thinking. He is traditionally considered to be a Greek, however, because the name Luke is Greek. But that's a minor issue, and many people actually do think he is Jewish despite having a Greek name. Maybe it's like Saul versus Paul. Saul was called Saul when he was in a Hebrew context, and Paul when he was among Greeks, and though he was, of course, Jewish. This verse also exposes a massive misunderstanding of the Bible on Joseph Smith's part, in that it considers the Bible to be a single testimony. However, it was actually written by dozens of different men over thousands of years, so it should be thought of as the testimony of all these men, not just one testimony. This viewpoint has led Mormons to believe that the Bible is insufficient on its own, as if it is only one witness, while God in the Bible requires 2 to 3 witnesses to establish everything. Therefore, they think that the Bible needs the Book of Mormon to be a second witness and thus be confirmed. But this was wrong, because the Bible by itself, being all these witnesses through the years, is far more than the minimum 2 to 3 witnesses. Verse 9 again affirms that Jesus is God and the God of the Book of Mormon, because God is here speaking and says, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever, which of course in the book of Hebrews is said of Jesus. Verses 11 through 13 speak of other books that God will cause to be written, not just the Bible, written by the Jews, or the Book of Mormon, written by the Nephites, but also books written by the other tribes of the house of Israel, which I have led away. and that at some future date all these books will come forth, so that the lost tribes of Israel will have them, verse 13. These books are what God will use to judge his people, verse 11, and these books will be gathered in one, verse 14. I'm guessing that the average Mormon would believe that this last part is yet future, since there is no evidence of any claimed scriptures from the lost tribes except for the Book of Mormon. Probably at a glance, they would even think that this is just referring to the Book of Mormon, so that the gathering together in one would be something like the Quad, where the Book of Mormon is bound together with the Bible along with the other LDS scriptures. But if you show them that this is talking about other books, they might change their tune. Although I suppose it's possible that they would consider this, and the text would allow for these other books to be the rest of the Book of Mormon after Nephi dies. What I really think was happening in this is that Joseph Smith was leaving open the idea of him, or perhaps someone else, bringing forth other claimed scriptures from other lands where Israelites from the other, quote, lost tribes had ended up. For example, who knows, they could have claimed that the people of Manasseh, the descendants of Manasseh, or Levi, or Simeon, or Reuben, or something like that, ended up in Australia or Hawaii or some of these other far-flung islands.